This is the second video on my series about using the LX Navigation Zeus flight computer. In this video I'll be talking about setting up a task and then how you might use it while you're flying. Because this is being recorded in the middle of a Scottish winter, I'm not actually able to do much videoing on the real device, so we'll be using the simulator. I will now show you how we set up a task. So you press the task button, then new task. It's asking for a task time, which you use when you're on assigned area tasks, so we're going to ignore that for the moment. It wants a task name, so we're going to enter a Club 100K, so we'll just give it a name here. Takeoff point, well, we'll select turn point. I'm just going to choose Portmore Caravan Site. The start is also going to be Portmore Caravan Site. You'll then see the next item is finished, but we don't want to finish at this point. We want to insert a turn point, but if you select the next item on the list and then press the button, it gives you the option to insert a turn point, so we'll do that. You can filter by distance or filter by name, but so we're just going to at the moment filter by, well, hit the name filter. And we're going to Stirling first, which is STI. So we select that. It's inserted that turn point. We'll now insert the next turn point. Select the next item, which is the finish. Insert turn point, name filter, and the next point is going to be Methven, MVN. And that's us entered the task. The observation zones come from defaults, which you can change, or you can change them on the fly. So if you go into the start, you select the start, then you can set the zone. You might want to set the radius to perhaps 6 kilometers rather than 5, so we'll select that. And then increase that to 6. If you select straight line, you just get a line, but typically in the UK we'd use a segment. We'll just accept that, or not. Okay, exit out of that, and it declares the task. At least it declares it to the unit that you just did this on. It won't declare it to the other one, so if you made this task up on the front Zeus, then it will not automatically be moved to the rear Zeus. To send the task to the other unit, hit the task button, then on the right hand side you'll see a couple of chevrons, so select that, and then on the left send task, and that will send it to the other unit. And here is what it looks like from the rear seat. Again, I'm going forward and sending the task to the rear. And there it is. And this works in both directions. When you create a task, it's stored in the Zeus internal memory and therefore can be recalled for use later. The way you do that is using the select button and then task. You can sort the tasks that have been stored by distance, sort by name, but let's say we want to do the club's 200k counterclockwise, so you select that using the bottom left button and then the select button up here, and it then loads it up and declares it to the FLARM. Here we are on a simulated cross-country flight, flying from Portmore Caravan Site to Stirling to Methven and back to Portmore Caravan Site. You can see we're currently in the start sector. We are 2,500 feet above the ground. We're actually over the Lomond Hills at the moment, so somewhat higher above the airfield. And before starting the task, we have to arm it. So we do that by going into the task button and then arm task. And as it says, you can now cross the start line. If you don't do that, then you can cross the start line and it will not move automatically to the next turn point. You can see we're actually in task mode at the moment, so we can see the lines of the task. So we'll just wait until we cross the start line. So as you can see, it's recognised the crossing of the start line. The next turn point has automatically been selected, so Stirling, 36.4 kilometres away, 15 degrees left to take us straight there. So let's come around to the left a little. Just using the keyboard controls here to control the simulation. So as I say, we're in task mode at the moment. If you go to the next page, it's turn point mode. And in this mode you can see this blue outline, and that indicates how far we can travel from our current height and arrive at the border at our safety altitude. I'll just zoom in a little here. Down on the bottom right is our final glide calculator. At the moment both the McCready is set to 0. So we need another 1,050 feet to get to this turn point of Stirling at our safety altitude. The simulator is currently coming down at 2.6 knots, so we'll just bring the nose up a little. We go to airport mode. Again you get this blue outline. As far as I can see, airport mode is not something you would use a great deal when we're gliding, because we generally want to avoid airports. So I'm not going to talk very much about airport mode. So just go back to task mode. You can see along the bottom on the nav boxes, well, firstly it's warning us about the airspace around Balado. So we can dismiss it today, dismiss it for 5 minutes, dismiss it for 30 minutes, etc. But let's just dismiss it for today. So the final glide calculator in task mode is showing the total height required to get all the way around the task, whereas in turn point mode it shows the height required to get to the next turn point, in this case Stirling. You can see the turn point at Balado's got a little green marker on it. That indicates it's a landable area, a landable field. Turn points that are not landable are like this one down here, Portmoak Northwest, which is just a blue blob without the green marker. Before we get to Stirling, I'd just like to point out some of the sub-pages. If you push the sub-page button, you get this sideways view of where you're heading with a little glider icon and the path required to get to Stirling, in this case, at your safety altitude, and the yellow line showing we're actually going to arrive over the hills too low. Next subpage button gives you a sort of 3D view of what's in front of you, or what should be in front of you if you look out the window. It's also got a artificial horizon, so if I just come round a little to the left, that'll take us out over the Forth Valley and then straighten up again. As we're flying along here, I'll just show you the effect of the McCready setting. If you hit the top left button, MC/BAL, gives you this, and you can set the McCready here. Let's say we want to set it to 1.5 knots. Select that, exit out, and you can now see on the final glide calculator that the top number shows the McCready 0 setting and the lower number the McCready 1.5, So you have to be a little bit higher if you want to fly at the ideal speed for a 1.5 knot next thermal. Here we are approaching the Stirling turn point, slightly off to one side, but you can see the turn point itself is 1.6 kilometers away at 42 degrees off track, so let's just come around to the right a little. So we've entered the sector, the zone. It's automatically moved on to the next turn point, which is Methven. Just change the colour of the turn point to show that you've been round it. If you go into turn point mode, you can see it's showing Methven. Here are the glide calculations to get to Methven. As we're heading up to Methven, I'll just show you some of the airspace information that's available. Obviously on the main map screen you do have the lines showing the borders of the airspace. If you go to the sub-page, then you can see here we're below the Class E, which is above us at the moment, and in front of us we've got the Strathallan zone. So we want to avoid those if we can. Let's say you're flying along and you want to know where the nearest airfield is, or landable field, known landable field. If you do a long press on this button here, it brings up the category, so you can select landable points and markers, so select that. And you now sort by distance, so the nearest one here is obviously Strathallan, which is 5.4 kilometers away. You've got plenty of height, you'll get 1,568 feet. You could get to Balado. The one there marked A31. Now I have fitted in this simulator the Scottish Landable Fields database, and for those that don't know what that is, it classifies certain fields around northern Scotland into 4 different categories, and these are A, B, C and Z. So one that starts with the letter A should be perfectly landable. A B is landable with some difficulty and risk of minor damage. A C landable with difficulty and risk of major damage. And a Z has not been visited recently. Here we are on final glide. We've got 18.7k to Portmoak. Even with a Macready of 2.3, we're 600 plus feet above final glide. At Macready 2.3. If we go to a sub-page, you'll see the yellow line actually stops short of Portmoak in the finish line. That's because we're currently flying at 82 knots. If I reduce the speed, go back to the sub-page, you can see that we're now above the purple line and we'll finish with plenty of height. We're now approaching Portmoak, 3.7k to go. We're still above final glide. Screen looks a little bit busy now because you've got the start sector, the finish line, the tracks that we've made when we took off. You're obviously looking out for other aircraft, so it's quite a busy time when you're on final glide and this close to the airfield. Jumping forward a little. So there we are, we've finished the task. Gives you the speed, time on task, task distance, etc. At this point you get a well-deserved bollocking for crossing the winch line below 1,000 feet. We'll leave that for the moment. Hope that was useful. Yeah, we'll just call it a day in terms of the flying capabilities of the simulator for the moment. The third in this series of videos will cover how to download the IGC file, and also some of the problems you may encounter when using both the real instrument and the simulator.